The alpha chose his lover publicly, forgetting his mate was watching. The sky over the kingdom of Vera was a deep gray, like an uncut gemstone, reflecting the tension that simmered in every corner of the castle. Mist curled through the high towers and across the cobbled streets of the capital, whispering secrets that few dared to hear. At the heart of the kingdom stood the palace, a massive fortress of stone and shadow, where the Alpha King ruled, not only by blood but by the unspoken fear and awe that followed him. King Kale moved through the grand hall with a presence that demanded attention. Every step was measured, every gesture precise. His dark cloak trailed behind him like a shadow that refused to leave. The courtiers bowed and murmured greetings, their voices trembling, not just in respect but in uncertainty. For Kale was more than a ruler. He was an alpha, bound by a mysterious and powerful magic that connected him to the very land he governed. Tonight, the palace was alive with celebration. Torches blazed along the walls, casting flickering gold and crimson light over banners that hung heavy with the kingdom's crest. The festival of solstice had drawn nobles and merchants from every corner, all eager to witness the splendor of the royal family. But Kale's heart was not on the feast or the revelry. It was on her. Leora, the court mage, stood near the dais, her robes flowing like liquid midnight. She was beautiful, yes, but her beauty held an unnatural magnetism, a dark shimmer that drew the eyes of everyone around her. There were whispers in the hall, whispers that she wielded magic beyond the usual spells of protection and healing, magic that flirted dangerously with power and temptation. Kale's eyes, however, did not wander. They stayed fixed on her. When he ascended the steps to the dais, the hall fell silent. Even the minstrels stopped their music, their notes dying in the air. Every eye followed him, but none so intently as Alara's. She was hidden behind a cluster of marble pillars, her chest tight, her hands clenching the folds of her gown. Her dark hair framed a face pale with shock and disbelief. Alara had been Kale's mate since childhood. The bond between them was more than affection. It was ancient, mystical, written into their very beings. The mark of the true mate glimmered faintly on her wrist, a sign only visible to those bound by destiny. Yet tonight, Kale ignored her entirely. "My lords and ladies," Kale's voice rolled across the hall, low and commanding, "tonight we celebrate more than the solstice. Tonight I honor someone whose presence has transformed my life." All eyes shifted toward Leora. The court held its collective breath as Kale stepped closer to her, taking her hand in his. She smiled, the kind of smile that promised secrets and shadows, and bowed her head in deference that was only half respect. Alara's world seemed to collapse inward. The heat of betrayal burned her cheeks, though no one knew she stood there. Her heart beat fast, not from anger alone, but from a longing she could not deny. She had loved him silently, devotedly, believing that their bond was unbreakable. Yet here he was, publicly declaring his affection for another. "I choose you, Leora," Kale said, his voice echoing like thunder in the silent hall. "As my partner, my confidant, my heart." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Others whispered prayers that the king's choice would not lead to disaster. The alpha's bond with his true mate was no mere superstition. It was a cornerstone of Vera's very survival. Ignoring it could bring ruin, or worse, awaken ancient curses long thought dormant. Alara felt her knees weaken. The pillars pressed cold against her palms as if the stone itself mourned with her. She wanted to run, to confront him, to demand why he could forget what had always been his truth. But the words stuck in her throat, trapped under the weight of humiliation and grief. Kale turned to face the crowd fully, Leora by his side. The torchlight glinted off his dark hair, casting shadows that seemed to make him taller, more untouchable than ever. Yet in that very shadow, Alara saw a faint tremor, a flicker of something unsettled beneath the surface, a sign that he did not fully understand the consequences of his public declaration. As the festival continued, the music resumed, but for Alara, every note was a knife. Every laugh of a noble, every cheer, grated against her heart. She slipped from the hall, moving silently through corridors that twisted like the roots of an ancient tree. Outside, the mist embraced her, hiding her tears as she walked toward the edge of the palace grounds. The forest beyond the walls was dense and old, filled with whispers of spirits who had guarded the kingdom for centuries. Alara had always been drawn to it, even before she understood the depths of her power. Tonight it called to her more insistently than ever, pulling her toward the forgotten glades where magic lingered thick in the air. She knelt by the roots of an ancient oak, pressing her hands to the earth. Her voice, soft and trembling, carried into the night. "Show me the way," she whispered, not to any living being but to something older, wiser, and stronger than she had ever known. The wind stirred. The leaves rustled and the whispers grew clearer, forming words she could understand. "Power waits, child of the true bond. But every gift demands a price." Alara's heart leapt, a mixture of fear and hope. She did not care about the price, not yet. All that mattered was reclaiming what had been taken from her, even if the cost was more than she could imagine. Back at the palace, Kale lingered on the dais, the murmurs of the court like distant echoes in his mind. Leora's smile was steady, assured, yet he felt a sudden chill in his chest. There was something he could not name, a presence beyond the walls of the hall, watching, waiting. His instincts, sharper than any sword, warned him of an unseen tension threading through the night. He ignored it at first, believing the crowd and the celebration enough to distract him. But as he glanced toward the shadows of the pillars, a flash of familiar eyes caught his. Alara's eyes. Burning with a mix of fury and sorrow, they pierced him deeper than any blade ever could. The realization hit him like a storm. He had not merely ignored her, he had wounded the very essence of their bond, and the consequences would not remain hidden for long. In the quiet forest, Alara lifted her gaze to the moon, silver and cold above the black trees. The whispers of ancient spirits danced in the mist around her, brushing against her skin like fingers of fate. "If you are ready," they murmured, "we will teach you what it means to rise." A shiver ran down her spine, both terrifying and exhilarating. She did not yet know the shape of the power within her, only that it was growing. And when Kale discovered her strength, the alpha who had chosen another before his true mate would find that destiny had a will of its own. The night deepened, and the kingdom slept unaware of the storm gathering in shadowed woods and hidden hearts. But in that darkness, a bond ancient and unbroken stirred quietly, waiting for the moment it would reclaim what had always been its right. Alara's fingers brushed a strange symbol carved into the tree's bark. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat in tune with her own. She whispered a single word, trembling yet certain, "I am ready." And somewhere in the castle, Kale's unease grew into something sharper, more urgent. The Alpha King who had chosen publicly, flaunting desire and ambition, felt for the first time the true weight of the bond he had dismissed. The night stretched on, full of silence and anticipation. Mist swirled, leaves whispered, and a destiny long delayed moved silently through shadowed paths, threading itself toward a confrontation that would change the kingdom forever. The morning after the festival, the castle of Aara seemed both alive and hollow. Torches burned bright in the corridors, but their light could not reach the shadows that lingered in the corners. The nobles whispered behind silk fans and painted smiles, careful to hide their unease. Kale, Alpha King of Aara, sat in his private chamber, staring out the tall window at the mist-wrapped forest below. His mind was restless, caught between pride and unease. Leora, the court mage, sat near him, her robes trailing like liquid darkness over the polished stone floor. Her eyes, deep and calculating, studied him with an intensity that both flattered and unnerved him. "Kale," she said softly, her voice like velvet hiding steel, "tonight the festival made the court remember my place beside you. That is what matters. The people will see strength. They will see stability. Kale's jaw tightened. And yet I feel empty. Something stirs in the night, something I cannot name. His gaze shifted toward the forest. I feel her, Alara, close. I cannot ignore her. Leora smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. Ah, the one the spirits call the true mate. She has always been bound to you. But power and destiny are rarely simple. Choices must be made. The heart, well, the heart is messy. Kale did not answer. He had always sensed Alara's presence, a pull that no spell or command could ever erase. And now, having publicly chosen Leora, he felt the tug stronger than ever, a silent accusation threading through his very being. Meanwhile, Alara had not returned to the castle. She walked through the misted forest, each step guided by instinct more than sight. The whispers of the ancient spirits followed her, brushing her cheeks with voices older than the oldest stone in the palace. "You are ready, child of the bond," they murmured. But readiness is not just power, it is understanding. Alara knelt by the roots of a great, silver-barked tree. Its branches stretched to the sky, pale leaves shimmering faintly in the dawn. She placed her hands against its rough bark and let her energy flow into the earth. Slowly her power awakened, a quiet hum that built into a song only she could hear. The first lessons were subtle, sensing the life in the soil, feeling the heartbeat of the forest, hearing whispers of creatures hidden from the human eye. Yet each lesson carried a warning. Every gift demands a choice. Every choice changes the balance. Alara's hands glowed faintly as she felt the pulse of her own magic, mingling with the ancient forces around her. A part of her ached to confront Kale, to demand why he had chosen another. But another part, a wiser, sharper part, urged patience. Power without control was dangerous. Patience and strategy were the first lessons of survival in a world ruled by kings, alphas, and magic older than memory. Back in the castle, Kale moved through the halls with a restless energy. The court sensed it, whispered about it, and avoided his gaze. Even Leora noticed the subtle shift, the way he paused, as though sensing something she could not see. It was during the midday audience that Kale first felt it clearly. A disturbance in the air, subtle but undeniable, like the brush of a spirit's hand. He froze, eyes narrowing, heart tightening. "Alara," he breathed. The word was almost a prayer. No one else noticed, and yet the courtiers shifted uneasily, as though aware of some unseen tension. Kale's mind churned. He had tried to ignore the pull, to focus on the political necessity of Leora's presence. But the true mate could not be ignored, not when her energy reached through walls, stones, and the very air he breathed. Alara, far from the castle, had begun to understand her own strength. She could sense Kale, could feel the shadows of the choices he made. But her power was not yet complete. She needed guidance, and the spirits had warned her, "Seek the forbidden. Only through the trial of the pact can the bond awaken fully." The forest opened into a hidden glade, untouched by human eyes for centuries. At its center stood a pool of water, black as obsidian, reflecting the sky like a mirror to another world. This was the place of the forbidden pact, a magic older than kings, a covenant whispered by the ancestors. Only those who dared risk their hearts could awaken the full potential of their bond. Alara stepped closer, her reflection shimmering in the water. She took a deep breath, feeling both fear and exhilaration. The spirits' whispers surrounded her. "Place your hands upon the pool, speak your desire. But remember, every action has a shadow." With trembling hands, she reached forward. The water's surface rippled under her touch, glowing faintly with her energy. She spoke softly, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. "I am ready. I seek the strength to reclaim what is mine, to awaken the bond, to protect the one who has forgotten me." The pool responded. Light and shadow twisted together, forming shapes that seemed both beautiful and terrifying. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the glade. "Power comes with choice. The bond can be restored, but the path is perilous." Are you willing to risk yourself for what your heart desires? Alara closed her eyes. I am willing. The water surged, pulling her energy into itself, testing her. Images flashed before her eyes. Kale in the hall with Leora, the kingdom trembling under shadow, and herself, standing strong, commanding forces beyond imagination. Pain, doubt, and temptation all pressed against her, but she held firm. When she opened her eyes, she felt changed. Her senses were sharper. She could feel the heartbeat of the forest, the strength of the stones, the flow of magic through every living thing. And most importantly, she could feel Kale, not just near him, but in every pulse of the air, as if a string of destiny connected them. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Kale could no longer ignore the shift. During the afternoon council, he paused mid-sentence, a chill running down his spine. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling her presence like a current under the skin of the kingdom. The pull was undeniable, almost painful. He excused himself and stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the forest. The mist swirled in silver and gray, the trees moving like living things. His heart clenched as he whispered her name again, feeling both longing and guilt. She grows stronger, a voice said softly from behind him. It was Leora, her tone a mix of caution and curiosity. Do you feel it, Kale, the one you have denied? She is rising, perhaps more powerful than you imagined. Kale turned, eyes narrowed. Yes, I feel her. And I cannot stop it. Leora's eyes flickered with something he could not read. Triumph, worry, desire, all of it perhaps, but Kale only felt the tension deepening. He had ignored the bond, underestimated its reach, and now the consequences were gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. As dusk fell, Alara returned to the forest's edge, her power contained but alive within her. She knew she could not confront Kale yet, not until she understood fully what it meant to wield the strength of the bond. She watched the castle from the shadows, the towers gleaming faintly in the dying light, and whispered, "Soon, you will remember me." That night the palace seemed restless. The torches flickered as though responding to some unseen force. Kale could not sleep, pacing in the quiet of his chambers. Leora lay in her own room, dreaming of influence and whispers of control. But Alara, far in the forest, slept beneath the branches of the ancient oak, her dreams filled with fire, shadow, and the unbreakable thread of destiny. And somewhere in the darkened corridors, the spirits murmured, "The bond cannot be denied. The alpha's choice will awaken storms, and when the true mate rises, even kings must bend or break." The night deepened. Stars shone coldly above, distant and indifferent, yet threaded with the unseen energies of magic and fate. The kingdom slumbered, unaware that the world itself was tilting toward a confrontation that could not be avoided. Alara's power had grown. The pull between her and Kale had strengthened, invisible yet undeniable. And the forbidden pact had set her on a path from which there would be no turning back. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, shadows stirred. The night carried a promise and a warning. The Alpha King had chosen publicly, flaunting desire and ambition, but destiny had its own plan. And in the darkness, the true mate prepared to awaken the storm. The castle of Werewolf was quieter than usual that morning, but the silence felt heavy, almost unnatural. The courtiers moved carefully, their whispers restrained as though the walls themselves had ears. The solstice festival was over, but the echoes of its chaos lingered. The grand hall where Kale had declared his choice for Leora now seemed hollow, haunted by the invisible tension of what had been set into motion. Kale stood alone in his private chambers, looking out over the misty forest. The pull of Alara was stronger than ever. He could feel her like a heartbeat beneath his skin, a thread tugging at him with relentless insistence. Even Leora, sitting in the corner of the room with a practiced calm, could not mask her unease. "You are distant," she said softly, a trace of unease coloring her voice. "The bond, she is more than you imagined." Kale turned sharply, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "She is my mate, but I cannot deny that I chose you publicly. The court in my kingdom, they need stability. Leora, this is not just about desire. It is about duty." Leora's expression remained carefully neutral, yet her eyes flickered with something Kale could not read. "And yet, desire cannot be commanded or hidden forever," she said quietly. "Be careful, Kale. Forces you do not understand are awakening." He did not answer. His thoughts were with Alara. The bond they shared pulsed like a living thing in the depths of his mind, impossible to ignore. He had thought choosing Leora could silence it, but it had only grown stronger, sharper, more insistent. Far in the forest, Alara walked among the trees, her senses alive with the power she had gained from the forbidden pact. She felt Kale's presence, fragmented and conflicted, like storm clouds gathering over the mountains. The pull between them was magnetic, a force she could no longer resist or deny. She stopped by a small clearing, where a stream flowed silver in the moonlight. Kneeling by the water, she traced her fingers over its surface, feeling the life that pulsed beneath it. "I can feel him," she whispered. "He is close, yet so far. I must understand how to reach him before it is too late." The spirit's whispers filled the clearing, a symphony of voices that had watched over the kingdom for centuries. "The Alpha is torn," they said. "His pride and duty blind him, yet his heart remembers. Guide him, child of the bond, but beware, the path is filled with temptation and shadow." Alara lifted her gaze to the stars, letting her mind drift. She had always believed in Kale's strength, his honor, but the sight of him with Leora had shaken her deeply. The public declaration of love had cut her, yet beneath the pain, a seed of resolve took root. She would not allow destiny to be rewritten by ambition or fear. She would reclaim her bond with him, but on her own terms. Back in the castle, Kale received reports of unrest among the nobles. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered that the festival's declaration had angered the spirits, that the bond of the Alpha and his true mate had been insulted. Others feared that Leora's influence was growing too quickly, her magic swaying decisions behind closed doors. Kale's frustration grew with each report. He knew the whispers were true, the balance of the kingdom was fragile, and ignoring Alara had consequences beyond his understanding. Yet pride and protocol held him back. He could not openly acknowledge the bond without risking scandal and chaos. That evening, Kale rode alone through the forest on a black stallion, seeking clarity among the shadows. The mist curled around the trees, thick and silver, and the world felt suspended between reality and dream. His senses were alert, every sound amplified, every movement a signal. And then he felt it, Alara. Strong, alive, calling to him in a way he could no longer resist. He dismounted and moved silently through the underbrush, following the pull. When he reached the clearing, he froze. Alara knelt by the stream, the silver light of the moon highlighting her dark hair and the glow of her emerging power. She looked up, startled yet composed. "Alara," Kale whispered, his voice low and full of conflict. She raised a hand, stopping him. "Do not speak, Kale, not yet. You have chosen publicly, and yet you cannot deny the bond between us." Her voice was steady, calm, but her eyes burned with unspoken emotions, hurt, longing, and determination. Kale struggled to find words. Pride and duty warred with desire and guilt. "I did what I thought was necessary," he said finally, his tone uneven. "The kingdom, the court, they need stability." Alara shook her head slowly. "And yet the bond cannot be ignored. You have tried to silence it, but it speaks louder than any law, any tradition. I can feel your heart pulling toward me even now. Denial cannot hide it." The tension between them was electric, charged with both love and frustration. Kale took a step forward, hesitant, his eyes locked on hers. I do not want to hurt you," he admitted, the words heavy with truth. "But I am trapped between my duty and my desire. I do not know how to choose without breaking something." Alara rose gracefully, her figure illuminated by moonlight. "Then listen to the bond, Kale. Do not let fear guide your heart. The court, the nobles, Leora, they are part of the world we must navigate. But the bond is older than all of them. It cannot be silenced, cannot be broken. Kale felt the weight of her words pressing into him, piercing the pride he had clung to. He had underestimated the depth of their connection, the strength of her spirit, and the inevitability of destiny. The forest around them seemed to respond, the leaves whispering like a chorus of ancient voices, urging him to acknowledge the truth. But even as he reached out, a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. Leora had followed him, silent and unseen until now. She stepped into the clearing, her presence both magnetic and menacing. "Kale," she said softly, her voice carrying over the water, "you cannot deny me forever. I am part of your life now, part of your choices. Do not forget that." Alara's eyes narrowed, her power humming beneath her skin. "She may be beside you, Kale, but she cannot take what is yours by destiny." The tension exploded, not with violence but with the force of will. Magic pulsed in the air, subtle but undeniable, as Leora and Alara faced each other across the clearing. Kale felt torn, his pulse racing as the full weight of the bond pressed on him. He realized then that ignoring the truth had consequences far beyond politics or appearances. It threatened the very balance of the kingdom. Alara stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. "I do not seek to destroy her. I seek only what is ours. The bond is not just my strength, it is yours, Kale, and it calls for recognition." Kale swallowed hard, the realization cutting deeper than any blade. "You are right," he admitted, his voice strained with conflict. "I cannot ignore this, I cannot ignore you." Leora's expression shifted from triumph to something darker, something calculating. "Then be prepared, Kale. Choices have consequences, and power will demand a price." The words hung in the air like a warning. Kale knew she spoke truth. The balance of loyalty, love, and destiny was delicate, and any misstep could shatter it entirely. But for the first time, he also felt clarity. The bond with Alara was not optional. It was essential, unavoidable, and undeniable. The night deepened around them, the forest alive with magic and tension. Kale stepped closer to Alara, the pull between them almost unbearable. She met his gaze, unflinching, her power and resolve illuminating the space between them. "I will not deny it again," Kale said finally, his voice firm despite the chaos surrounding them. "I may falter, I may fear, but I will not ignore what is true. You are my mate, Alara, and the bond will guide us both." Alara's lips curved in a small, quiet smile, the kind that spoke of relief, determination, and the calm after a storm. "Then we begin," she said softly, "together." Even as they acknowledged the bond, Leora remained at the edge of the clearing, her presence a shadowed reminder of the challenges still ahead. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with political intrigue, magic, and the unspoken dangers of ambition and desire. But Kale and Alara knew one truth above all. The bond between them was alive, unbroken, and more powerful than any obstacle. The night whispered secrets in the rustling leaves, carrying both promise and warning. Kale's heart beat faster, not with fear but with anticipation. The choice he had delayed, the truth he had avoided, had finally been acknowledged. And with that acknowledgement came power, clarity, and an unshakable bond that no force could sever. In the distance, the castle loomed, silent and oblivious. The court slept, unaware that the Alpha King had faced the first true test of his heart, and that destiny, once awakened, could not be contained. The forest held its breath. The stars above twinkled coldly, but beneath them, two hearts, bound by fate, love, and ancient magic, began to move in unison. The Alpha had finally faced his dilemma, but the storm was far from over. Shadows still lingered, ambition still threatened, and the world itself seemed poised on the edge of transformation. Yet in that moment, Kale and Alara knew one truth that no whisper, no spell, no ambition could undo. The bond between them was eternal and nothing could silence it. And in the depths of the forest, Where moonlight kissed silver leaves and magic hummed like a living heartbeat, destiny moved forward. The Alpha and his true mate were united in recognition, even as the world waited to test the strength of that union. The castle of Vera had never felt heavier. The corridors, once alive with whispers and laughter, now echoed with tension, as though the very stones knew what was coming. Shadows stretched unnaturally under torchlight, dancing like specters that waited for the night's events to unfold. Kale stood on the balcony of the highest tower, looking out at the forest below. Mist curled between the trees, silver and quiet, hiding paths that only the brave or desperate would dare to walk. His mind raced, tangled with guilt and desire. He had finally acknowledged the bond with Alara, but recognition alone would not undo the turmoil his choices had caused. The kingdom itself felt fragile, teetering on the edge between order and chaos. "Alara is rising," Leora whispered from the doorway, her presence calm yet menacing. "Her strength grows with every passing day. You cannot shield her, Kale, and you cannot shield yourself." Kale turned, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I do not seek to shield her from her power. But I must protect the kingdom as well." His voice was steady, though his heart beat like a drum in his chest. "I chose her because she is mine by destiny, not because I desire conflict. Leora, this is not just a matter of loyalty or power. This is about the truth of the bond." Leora's lips curved faintly. "Truth is often the hardest thing to accept, isn't it?" She left without another word, her shadow retreating into the halls, leaving Kale alone with his thoughts and the weight of responsibility. Far beyond the castle in the heart of the forest, Alara walked swiftly through the trees. Her power, awakened by the forbidden pact, pulsed beneath her skin. She could feel the threads of magic in the soil, in the streams, in the very air she breathed. Every pulse of life connected to her, and yet her heart focused solely on one presence, the Alpha King who had ignored his destiny for a fleeting moment of pride. She reached the hidden glade where she had first performed the pact. The pool of black water shimmered under the moonlight, ripples reflecting the stars like broken shards of silver. Kneeling by the water, Alara called forth her energy, letting it flow into the forest, into the streams, into herself. The spirits of the ancient guardians surrounded her, their whispers a chorus of guidance and caution. "Kale is near," one of the voices said, low and melodic. "But beware, child of the bond. Shadows linger and ambition does not yield willingly." Alara nodded, her resolve firm. "I will face whatever comes," she whispered. "Not for vengeance, not for pride, but for the bond that cannot be denied." Meanwhile, Kale descended into the forest on horseback, moving silently through the mist. Every instinct honed over years of rule and combat guided him as he navigated the hidden paths. The pull of the bond was stronger than ever, almost unbearable. He could feel Alara's presence in every rustle of leaves, in every whisper of wind. When he reached the glade, he dismounted, stepping softly onto the moss-covered ground. There she was, radiant in the moonlight, her eyes calm but filled with unspoken power. The air between them thrummed with energy, the bond unmistakable and overwhelming. "Alara," Kale breathed, stepping closer. I should have acknowledged you sooner. I should have never doubted what destiny has written." She looked at him steadily, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of love, strength, and quiet reprimand. "You have learned now," she said softly. "That is what matters. The bond is alive, Kale, and it demands truth, courage, and action." Their connection pulsed visibly in the space between them, a force beyond words. Kale reached out and Alara took his hand, the moment charged with an energy that seemed to lift the very air around them. Yet even as they stood united, a shadow approached from the edge of the glade. Leora appeared, her expression unreadable, her power radiating subtly. "So this is the moment," she said quietly. "You cannot escape the consequences of choices made in pride. You may claim each other, but the kingdom, the balance, will demand its reckoning." Alara's gaze did not waver. "I seek no destruction, only what is ours by bond and destiny. The shadows of ambition cannot erase the truth. Kale stepped closer, placing himself between Alara and Leora. This ends now, he said firmly. I choose Alara as my mate, as my equal, as the one bound to me by the oldest law of all. There will be no more denial. Leora's eyes flickered with a mix of respect and frustration, but she did not attack. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with tension. Magic pulsed around them, subtle but undeniable, as if the trees themselves acknowledged the power of the bond. Then, without warning, the ground trembled slightly. The whispers of the ancient spirits grew urgent. The bond is recognized, they said, but ambition cannot be ignored. You must move together, heart and mind, to restore balance. Alara and Kale exchanged a look, understanding passing silently between them. They would face the trials together, not just as lovers, but as the alpha and his true mate, united by destiny and strengthened by trust. The first trial came in the form of Leora's magic, subtle yet potent. She conjured illusions meant to confuse and divide, visions of fear and regret that threatened to shake their bond. But Kale and Alara stood firm, their hands joined, their hearts aligned. The illusions shattered against the strength of their connection, fading into nothing as the forest hummed approval. You are stronger together than apart, the spirits whispered. Remember this, and no force can undo the bond. As the night deepened, Kale and Alara walked through the forest, their hands entwined, their energy synchronized. They spoke little, for words were unnecessary. The bond itself communicated more than speech ever could. Yet even in this quiet, the air was alive with potential, charged with the promise of redemption and transformation. When dawn approached, the glade glowed with a soft silver light. The first rays of sunlight pierced the mist, casting patterns on the forest floor that seemed almost deliberate, as if the world itself recognized the power that had been awakened. Kale turned to Alara, his eyes filled with gratitude and awe. I cannot thank you enough, he said softly, for your patience, for your strength, for your courage. I was blind, and you have shown me the truth of the bond. Alara smiled, a quiet, radiant expression that spoke of forgiveness and resilience. We are partners now, she said. Equal in bond, equal in strength. The past cannot be changed, but the future can be shaped together. Their moment was interrupted by a distant voice echoing across the forest, a messenger from the castle, breathless and urgent. Your Majesty, a threat approaches the kingdom. Forces beyond the borders moving swiftly, Kale's expression hardened. The bond had strengthened them, but it also brought responsibility. Then we return, he said, determination cutting through his weariness. Together, Alara, the kingdom must be protected. Alara nodded, feeling the pull of destiny in every fiber of her being. They mounted their horses and rode through the forest, the bond between them guiding each step. Shadows from the past, threats from ambition, and challenges yet unseen awaited them, but they faced them side by side, stronger and more united than ever. As they approached the castle, the sky blazed with the colors of dawn, golden and crimson, as if the world itself celebrated the union of the alpha and his true mate. The courtiers and nobles, unaware of the full extent of what had occurred in the forest, watched in awe as Kale and Alara entered the gates together, hands joined, their presence commanding yet serene. In the throne room, Kale took his place, Alara at his side. The court bowed, murmurs of surprise and admiration rippling through the hall. Leora stood at the edge, watching, a mixture of resignation and respect in her gaze. She had not been defeated in malice, but by the undeniable force of destiny and the strength of true bond. Kale's voice echoed through the hall, steady and commanding. Today marks not only the rise of a new day, but the recognition of truth. The bond of the alpha and his true mate is alive and unbroken. Let it guide us, protect us, and strengthen the kingdom of Aara. Alara's hand brushed his, a silent acknowledgement of partnership and unity. The kingdom felt it too, the subtle shift in the air, the magic in the stones and the soil affirming that balance had been restored. Though challenges would come, though ambition and shadows still lingered at the edges of the world, the Alpha and his mate now stood together, bound by destiny, strengthened by trust, and guided by the unbreakable bond that had been tested and proven. And as the sunlight poured into the throne room, gilding the banners and the faces of the people, Kale and Alara knew one truth above all. They were no longer divided by fear, pride, or choice. Together they would face whatever the world demanded, their hearts and powers intertwined, their destiny fulfilled. The kingdom of Werewolf had seen storms, shadows, and betrayal, but it had also witnessed the triumph of love, courage, and the unyielding strength of destiny. And the legend of the Alpha and his true mate would echo through the ages, a story of recognition, redemption, and unwavering bond. In the quiet of the forest beyond the castle walls, the spirits whispered one final affirmation, their voices threading through the trees and the wind. The bond is eternal. The Alpha and his mate have risen, and no force, no ambition, no shadow can undo what destiny has forged. The world breathed, balanced once more, as Kale and Alara stood side by side, their hands joined, their hearts aligned, and their love, quiet yet unstoppable, shining brighter than any crown or kingdom could ever demand.